Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Wake and Take. I hope you all enjoyed yesterday's preseason winners episode, as today we're talking the top 5 preseason losers. Yes, we did 10 winners and only doing 5 losers. There's not that many losers, and even if there are, they've got some time to prove themselves too, so felt unfair to overreact too much to only 1 week of preseason, but there's definitely some storylines that are at least concerning. On top of talking about these 5 losers, we're also going to be talking about players that picked up injuries, whether it be from training camp practices or at the preseason. So we'll get some insight into those as well, as that's also kind of a loser, even if it is a little bit more out of their control with health. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And first things first, everyone, welcome in. I am the authority here. I declare it fall. I know it is August 13th. I know it. I get it. I understand. But I added cinnamon to my coffee this morning, and I think that that is the first step in it being fall. So I highly recommend everyone here, if you've not thrown cinnamon in your coffee, to go ahead and do so. It's fall. I'm officially declaring it. We've got preseason football going. You know, it's starting to cool off a little bit. My allergies are beginning to act up again, so that's always fun. And now I've got cinnamon in my coffee, so I think it's fall. You know, I don't care what anyone else says. So happy fall, everyone. But welcome in. Good morning to you, Fantasy Plumber, Mark, Donald, Scott, Bach, Best Ball, Dakota, Alex, Jason. Thank you all for tuning in. I got to say, Donald, before I move on, while you're in San Francisco, I don't know if you've been there before. I've only been there a few times, but I love the city. And I always like to recommend, if you have the time, to go across the bay to the area. I think it's Sausalito is the city. It's like a smaller little town. But then near it is Muir Woods National Monument. It's an incredible redwood forest. It's a very small little hike. It's got a good little creek running through it, and it's just got some massive, massive redwoods. It's not too far from the city of San Francisco. It's right across the bay. Highly recommend doing that. And it's free nature. Who doesn't like free nature? So that is the Muir Woods, founded by, of course, John Muir, one of the godfathers of outdoor enjoyment here in our country. So I highly recommend that spot while you're out in NorCal, specifically in San Francisco area. Get you some redwoods. It's fun. It's nice. It's cool. But anyway, we've got some preseason to talk about here. We're done with the pleasantries. Let's go ahead and hop right into the injury updates before we get you the top 5 preseason losers. First off, Malik Neighbors, he picked up an ankle sprain on Sunday at a practice. It has not necessarily been reported the severity, and when that's the case, generally that means it is a minor ankle sprain. I feel like if it was major, we probably would have heard some concerns by now. And that's also evidenced by the fact that he has not been ruled out for the next preseason game this Saturday against the Texans. Now, I don't think he will play. I assume the Giants will, keep playing, cautious with him and not really push him out there, make him, make this injury any worse. But it's at least good to hear that there isn't any major news. Like, I think that that's good enough at this report. And yeah, apparently a report came out minutes ago as I'm getting set up that he is good. So that's exactly how I'd characterize it as well. I'm, with these minor ankle sprains, they're not really that big of a deal, at least when we're this far removed from the season. I know we're still, just a few weeks away, but that'll give him time to heal up. If it was a major ankle sprain, if it was a high ankle sprain, then we could be a little bit worried, but I'm sure he'll be fine and he'll be out there. Next, we have Jahmyr Gibbs, who picked up a hamstring injury yesterday in camp. We all know it. This is a hamstring injury. He'll probably be fine. Again, no information out there about the severity of this hamstring injury. But again, given that we haven't really heard much, we should probably assume that it's a minor hamstring injury. But even then, a minor hamstring injury still should give us some pause when it comes to our Jahmyr Gibbs love this season, because he also had an undisclosed soft tissue injury at OTAs that sidelined him for 2 weeks already. So it just seems that something is lingering and continuously bothering him. He missed a couple games last year due to hamstring injury as well. It's just things you don't want to hear. Of course, the same thing that we'll say about Malik Neighbors, with it still being a few weeks away from the season and with it seemingly being a minor hamstring injury. Hopefully he just sits out at practice the rest of training camp and is able to be good to go for week 1. I would assume that's going to be the case. I'm assuming that we're not really going to hear much more Jahmyr Gibbs news this offseason, which is fine. He doesn't have to do anything else. So if anything, if Jahmyr Gibbs becomes available or his ADP drops an underdog or something like that, go ahead and capitalize on Jahmyr Gibbs. He's still a really good athlete. And, you know, his type of player just gets hamstring injuries. That's just what happens. We have to understand that for these elusive, speedy guys, they're just going to get hamstring injuries. And at this point, it's seemingly minor, and hopefully he has enough time to get ready for week 1. And even then, maybe he'll just be like 70% or for week 1 or something. But at least he's getting this hamstring injury out now. Hopefully he takes the necessary precautions for this not to come back. Another injury from the preseason, Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown suffered a sternoclavicular joint dislocation and had to be hospitalized. I've seen some reports that this is actually an injury that's pretty common in car crashes. So it has to be pretty serious, you know, whether landed on it wrong, got hit wrong. I don't know why. I don't remember what caused the injury. But either way, he is injured as well. This was the injury in 2019 that Tyreek Hill suffered on the same team. Andy Reid came out and said this. And Tyreek Hill ended up missing 4 weeks with this injury. So hopefully that timeline is about the same for Marquise Brown. That would probably sideline him week 1 or like make him right there at week 1, essentially. So that's what we're hoping for. But with this just being it's a severe injury at the end of the day. Like, we got to make sure he comes back okay. It seems like he will. If he can avoid PUP, then that's all we really care about. If he misses a game or 2, fine. But if he does land on PUP and has to miss like 4 games instead of 4 weeks, that's a little bit of a concern. It's seeming right now that it's just going to be these 4 weeks that at least is the timeline, sort of like true timeline. We're just kind of going off what we've seen with Tyreek Hill before. But it's a concern for Hollywood Brown because, you know, you want him to be able to get these extra reps with Patrick Mahomes and be able to build that connection. The benefit there being that Xavier Worthy's going through the same thing. Yes, Xavier Worthy's going to be able to take, you know, probably a little bit of a step ahead now, which is awesome for Xavier Worthy. This is great news for Xavier Worthy and his ability to build a connection with Patrick Mahomes. But at least it isn't like Marquise Brown was like fighting for a roster spot. You know what I mean? Like, he's still going to be able to come back and be an important part of this offense and, you know, still get those deep shots, still be a guy getting passes from Patrick Mahomes. So I wouldn't worry too much about Marquise Brown. If you could get him at a discount now, I would actually recommend that. I would say I'm actually kicking myself a lot. I was offered a Marquise, I have Marquise Brown. Someone sent me a Marquise Brown trade, like wanting to get him. It was a DK Metcalf and Hollywood for Devontae Smith and Mike Gesicki, and I should have just done it. In fact, I might just send it back to him. But, you know, I also don't – it felt like I could squeeze a little bit more juice, and that was not the case. I countered with not much more being added, and it was a decline, and it seems that all tradings have halted. But I should have just done it because that was pre-injury, and now I kind of just wish I got some Devontae Smith and Mike Gesicki on my team. But instead, still rolling with Marquise Brown. But I'm not too worried. He will be back. He'll still be catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. And it's not like his value or usage is going to change too much as a result of this injury. It just might take a couple more weeks for him to get acclimated as opposed to already being ready. So slight concern, but not too big. Marshawn Lloyd, however, continuously picking up injuries, and this time a hamstring injury he picked up in the game. And apparently he was already playing through a hamstring injury for this game, and it was him kind of re-injuring that thing. And then he comes out in the press conference after and says, I've had hamstrings before, so I'll just rehab and get back as fast as I can. He said he could walk on it and hopes it's not too bad. That sounds to me like Marshawn Lloyd does not know how to recover from hamstring injuries, if I'm going to be honest with you. Him saying that I just want to rehab and get back as fast as I can is the exact opposite of what I want to hear with a hamstring injury. I understand we all want to hear, I want to get back on the field as quickly as I can, but not with a hamstring injury. Not with a hamstring injury. I'm actually playing through a hamstring injury on the show right now. I pulled my hamstring in a soccer game on Sunday, and even I'm in pain just sitting here. Hamstring injuries suck. Yes, you're able to walk on them, but it still hurts. And then you can't even stretch your leg properly when you're sprinting. Your leg kind of stays straight. Like I've done this before. I've tried to play soccer with hamstring injuries. I try to play through them because I'm not a professional athlete and I don't care about my health. And I'm just trying to have fun with the boys. But if you're a professional athlete and getting out there on the field means a lot, you got to take your time to, work on your hamstring and let it get actually healthy. You're not in a Sunday soccer league. You're on the NFL, big guy. So go ahead and actually get healthy. Worry about your hamstring injury a little bit. Don't just be like, I'm going to get back as fast as I can. I can walk on it. It's not too bad. Of course you can. It's a hamstring injury. It's just something that lingers and hurts, and you easily can pull again and make more severe than it actually is. So Marshawn, please just take a step back and let this thing process. I know we still have a few weeks before the season, but I just really don't want to hear Marshawn Lloyd out there. Like, if I hear Marshawn Lloyd's at practice, I'm going to be pissed. So hopefully he actually does take his time and isn't rushing himself back from this injury. The next injury that happened last week was Drew Lock. We did talk about it as it happened on Thursday, but we have a little bit more information about this injury. Drew Lock picked up something, a bone bruise and an oblique strain in this game. But good news for Drew Lock's stashers and Superflex leagues, it's seeming like he's going to be good to go for the season. Now, of course, everything in this season is going to be contingent on Daniel Jones' performance and Daniel Jones' health. But as of now, head coach Brian Daboll has come out and said that the Giants will not be adding another quarterback to the room amid Drew Lock's injury, that they're just going to be rolling with Tommy DeVito as the backup. And then they also brought in a rookie, I believe, either an undrafted or at the end of the draft. But either way, with that being said, it seems that the Drew Lock injury isn't that severe and that he will be able to at least be a backup sooner rather than later. So that's good. He did look bad in the preseason, though, so we'll see. Now, of course, the offensive line in New York is really terrible, so I'm just curious to see how it'll go this season. But I will say I still think that Drew Lock is worth rostering. I really do. I do think that there will be a Drew Lock pulling of the plug a Daniel Jones pulling of the plug at some point, just because of the injury guarantee on his contract, whether or not he performs well or not. I just think that the Giants are going to want to move on from Daniel Jones, unless he performs lights out. But I don't think they're just looking for mediocre Daniel Jones. I think they want to see really good Daniel Jones, to be honest with you guys. And I think if they miss that, they'll go see what else is available given the money that they could lose if Daniel Jones sustains an injury. So just keep that in mind. Even though Drew Lock looked bad in the preseason, even though he picked up this injury, there's still a huge chance for him to hit the field this season. And then lastly, this happened before I went live, so I don't have a ton of information for this, unfortunately. But it also doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because who cares, really, about Chase Claypool landing on season-ending injured reserve? Chase Claypool will not be playing football this season. He's injured. He's done. He's out. No big takeaways there, really. He is a Buffalo Bill. It's already a super crowded receiver room, and he was already buried on the depth chart. So not really that big of a deal. Just really kind of puts the nail in the coffin for Chase Claypool in his NFL career. If I've got to be honest with you, it's going to be hard for him to bounce back from season-ending IR after already kind of becoming a journeyman that teams get rid of pretty quickly. So Chase Claypool, dunzo is how I'll put it. Chase Claypool is dunzo. Officially, I have now 2 declarations here on this morning's Wake and Take. One, it's fall. I don't care that it's the middle of August. It's fall. Secondly, Chase Claypool is officially donezo. So that is all the injury updates I have for you. There might be others out there. Maybe there's some more minor ones, but those are kind of the big ones for me that I wanted to touch on. Really nothing too much to concern about at this point in the season. The more concerning ones are going to be Marshawn Lloyd and Marquise Brown right now. Just keep your eye on those. As we move on to the 5 biggest losers from the preseason. Before we hit into that, though, why don't we hear a little bit about the injury finder?
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone. I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can. Injury proneness is real. At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare 2 players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
Go get that Injury Finder. We just break down injury updates. If you have the Injury Finder app, you can get ahead of some of those injuries. It's not necessarily predicting who will get injured. It is quantifying a probability that a player can get injured based on the types of plays that they run, based on their prior injury history, stuff like that. Yes, we understand injuries are pretty hard to predict at a meta level, as in like this player is 100% going to get injured. But it is very, very easy to quantify risk of an injury towards a player. It's a very, very good app to be able to, at least put a value to how a player could get hurt. And it's only $5. So go get that injury finder. It's really, really good stuff put together by our data team. So I've got 5 big preseason losers for you. And we'll see. We'll see, right? Again, I do want to go ahead and say, like, yes, I understand that this is only 1 week of preseason and we shouldn't overreact too much. But that's why I lowered from 10 winners to only 5 losers. Like, I do want to press pause on a few players. And I'll even say that in some of the ones I've mentioned as a loser. Like, there's some at least silver linings that we can talk about with some of these players, but either way, they are losing some value and losing some steam, and there's some concern around these players. And my first one, and honestly, probably the biggest loser. We'll just start with the biggest loser. This one stings, guys. Trey Benson. Trey Benson finished the day 8 carries for 21 yards. Okay? That's not awful, right? Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. Like, your first NFL action, sure, you're not going to be super efficient. But the big concern here, Michael Carter, 7 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. DJ Dallas also had 21 rush yards off of only 3 carries. Even Tony Jones got mixed in with 5 carries, right? But the big concern, on top of all these other running backs getting mixed in, and on top of Michael Carter actually being more productive and looking better than Trey Benson, is just this. Zay Cantz FF on Twitter put together all of Trey Benson's rush attempts from this game, and it is just not great. It is just not great. I feel like I would look better, to be completely honest, behind that offensive line. So let's go ahead and watch this together, and you guys can maybe have some of the takeaways I have, but we'll just watch. I'll be silent. I'll quit yapping. Check it out.
Desmond Ridder getting to start at quarterback for the Cardinals, and they're going to run another rookie, Trey Benson, between the tackles, and he's stacked up after a short game. About a half as well. Ridder going to hand it off here to Benson, and nice running room up to about the 20. He's got to learn pass protection. Amari DiMercato, who is not playing in this game, but as Benson gets the carry, and this time keeps the feet moving for an hour, because there's so much to talk to him about. But as Danny said, despite just the outside interest as that play was going in 19, I mean, that's a true story. I normally just busting your chops. That is a true story, at least as told by you, as Benson gets it across. Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Drake Dortch, Zay Jones, as Benson keeps the feet moving and then
going under center and running the old schemes.
Trey Benson trying to find some room on first down, gets back. Desmond Ridder getting the start.
So yeah, that was not great. I'm sure you could all agree. That looked, instead of football, that looked a little bit more like running into the blocker simulator. Yes, the O-line not really doing any favors, but he has no vision. He has no vision. He was running straight into his blockers every single time. Yes, you can work on that. It's fine. And he did show some of his power. I believe it was maybe the second run.
Between the tackles.
I think it was
short game.
It's pretty decent, right? Yes, this one, right? He gets through. There's a little bit of a hole, breaks a tackle, gets like 5-6 yards. That's fine. But it is not like it. You want to see more. You just want to see more. You're following the pile, you're just... It's not good. He was running straight into the damn blockers every time. You have this one on the outside, right? Man, I found a good timestamp there. Like literally, you can. There's room here. You can get outside. Instead, he tries to cut back and lose yards. Like you could, if you're quick. There's a ton. Look at the blockers here. Look at this space. I've played enough Madden to know this halfback stretch should be a first down. Okay, I've done it. I've done enough of that. Look at, I know that he gets off this block. I see that. But any explosiveness there, and you get through that hole. So I know that he demonstrates some strength here in some of these runs, and I know that he keeps his feet moving, yada, 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 but he had no vision, and that's my big concern. Just consistently running straight into his blockers time after time after time, and just not really looking great at all. Really not looking good. And again, to see Michael Carter get 7 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown, that is not good. And we also know that Amari DiMercato did not play. And we also remember the reports from the past couple weeks, actually, from actual training camp, not rookie OTAs, but actual training camp, is that the RB2 competition is wide open between DiMercato, Benson, and Carter. And that's just not what you want to hear. I would say, Ryan, that is funny. Trey Benson looked better than Louis Rees-Sammet. I'll give Benson that. Like LRZ looked very rugged. I'm going to be honest there. He looked like running in straight directions. It just didn't look right. This was at least running straight, just into people. But he looked like a running back, just not a very good one, and definitely didn't demonstrate any vision at all. So I'd be very, very concerned. But hopefully he works on it. On the bright side, right? He's going to be behind James Conner no matter what. It wasn't really expected to get a ton of volume this year unless James Conner got hurt. So hopefully you really can use this season to learn a lot. James Conner's a really good veteran to learn from. So we'll see. But that was not good. That was not good. And I saw a lot of people. I'm not a big college film grinder, but I know that a lot of people said that this is what he looked like at Florida State too. Just kind of not really many cuts, running straight into running straight into his line and everything. It was just not good. Just not good. Did not look good. Not very. Not giving much confidence in Trey Benson. First round draft picks for sure in our rookies. That's a bit concerning. We'll go ahead and just keep the running back game going. I've got 3 running back losers. So we'll go to the next one. It's Clyde EdwardsHelaire. I actually saw a comment at the beginning asking if Clyde EdwardsHelaire was going to make this list. And yes, he is. He is making this list. And I actually didn't know about missing the practice with an illness. But we already knew that Clyde EdwardsHelaire was kind of losing his roster spot. They were throwing a ton of different running backs in at practice. We had heard all of the Deneric Prince hype as the RB2 behind Pacheco. We were hearing Kadarius Toney working as a running back. They brought in Keontae Ingram at some point. And then, they also still have Carson Steele from, I believe he was undrafted this year. Either way, lots of running backs were getting worked in practice, and we didn't really hear anything from Clyde EdwardsHelaire at all. And then in this game, he has 2 carries for 0 yards, and then has no targets at all. So very, very rarely utilized, and then did not look good in his limited opportunity. On top of already hearing from camp that he had kind of lost the backup job to Deneric Prince. That's just not what you want to hear. And then in this game, Isaiah Pacheco had 2 carries. Carson Steele had 4 carries for 29 yards and a touchdown. Deneric Prince had 4 carries. Keontae Ingram had 4 carries. Imani Bailey had 2 carries. Louis Rees-Sammet had 2 carries. Lots of different players had carries in this game. In fact, even Louis Rees-Sammet had more rush yards in this game than Clyde EdwardsHelaire. So that's a big, big loser to me, especially with him being sidelined at practice now for an illness. We'll put quotes around that. Not looking good for CEH. I know we already kind of knew he was a bust, but to see it happen already in the preseason, that's just wild to me. We saw last year he was actually utilized a little bit in the absence of Jerick McKinnon, sometimes without Pacheco. Like, he actually had a couple spike weeks there with volume, but it is over now. It is over now. Seeing him look bad in the preseason, seeing these other running backs get extra snaps, hearing these other running backs going ahead of him in training camp, it is not good. So Clyde EdwardsHelaire, not a good time right now. Yeah. So next up, we'll have Chris Rodriguez. We kind of talked about this yesterday with Michael Wiley. The Michael Wiley hype is real, I believe. Michael Wiley finishes the day with 8 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. Also had himself some receptions as well. I have been saying Michael Wiley from the Senior Bowl was one of the running backs that really stood out to me, and I know he's an undrafted free agent, but he was pretty good at Arizona, just pretty good. Not like stats to pop off the page or anything, but he also never really had a ton of volume. But he looked really good at the Senior Bowl as a pass catcher, on top of also being a pretty good runner. So I felt that he had a potential here to beat Chris Rodriguez for a roster spot, because Chris Rodriguez doesn't really have a lot of athleticism in the tank or anything like that, but Michael Wiley does. And so I felt with Austin Eckler kind of being there, they might want a little bit more of an all-purpose back as the RB3. And then Michael Wiley goes out and has 8 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. What does Chris Rodriguez do? 6 carries for 0 yards. Yes. 6 carries for 0 yards. 6 carries for 0 yards. That is awful. So I would go ahead and put the nail in the coffin for Chris Rodriguez, people rostering, hoping, as a handcuff behind Brian Robinson Jr., that maybe he could come in and at least get volume. I don't think that'll be the case. Here are some other running backs that had carries. Brian Robinson had 5. Austin Jones had 2. Jeremy McMichaels had 3. Austin Eckler had 2. And again, Chris Rodriguez, 6 carries for 0. Big ol' 0 yards. That is a losing performance, especially with the undrafted free agent rookie Michael Wiley looking as spry as he did. So remember that name, Michael Wiley, and forget this name, Chris Rodriguez. The next big loser is Troy Franklin. Not good. Troy Franklin only had 1 target. He did not catch it, but that's not really the big story here. We had already been hearing rumblings from Broncos camp that he wasn't really looking good at training camp, that he was actually being passed by Devon Vele. On the roster, Tim Patrick was ahead of him, and Troy Franklin was really only working with the second and third teams. Well, in the preseason, that's, your ability to, show, okay, maybe I'm not like the best at practice or whatever. Like, it's hard to make a name for myself with all these wide receivers ahead of me. But at least against lesser opponents, I can go out there and do well. Well, he obviously didn't have any time with Bo Nix, which might hurt him a little bit. But still, to not bring in your only target is not good, especially when 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different Broncos caught a pass in this game. One of them being Devon Vele, another one being Lil Jordan Humphreys. Josh Reynolds got in on the action. Tim Patrick again. Even David Sills V, a guy that I haven't remembered for years now. Maybe I'm just thinking of someone else. But either way, David Sills V had better production than Troy Franklin. That's really just not what you want to hear. On top of only having 1 target, you would just hope that he would be utilized a bit more, given some more opportunity. He wasn't, and then dropped his only target. On top of not doing well at the combine, on top of not doing well throughout really the entire training camp OTA process, and then now coming out and having a dud in the preseason, it's time to sound the alarms for Troy Franklin. I've got to be honest here. That is not good. Not good at all. 1 target, 0 catches, 0 yards. Troy Franklin, not good, not looking good. And maybe we should start listening to these beat reporters as they talk about the Devon Vele hype, him kind of climbing up the roster. It might not be till 2025 even till we see Troy Franklin, if at all. If at all, it is really not good, everything that we're hearing from him. So a big loser is going to be Mr. Troy Franklin. And then my last big loser, but we'll have an honorable mention just because I know you guys want to hear me take my L's. I'll take my L's, but not for long. I've got 2 players left. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk some silver linings here. Justin Fields, big loser. In some research for this episode, I was looking at what other people were saying their big loser. And Justin Fields was everyone's biggest loser, but it wasn't that bad. He still finished the day 5 of 6 for 67 yards. The big problem here is that Justin Fields fumbled 2 snaps. Now, luckily, they were not lost fumbles. He was able to pick them back up, but he fumbled 2 snaps and was sacked twice. That's the concerns. Those are the issues that Justin Fields had been plagued by in Chicago as well, especially the sacking issue. But again, it is still preseason, still has time to work on these things. But the big concern is that Mike Tomlin has come out and said that Russell Wilson is still in pole position. And, Russell Wilson is going to come back sooner rather than later, probably with this minor calf injury that he's been kind of sitting out for. But yeah, Fields can't stop taking sacks. Still a very slow processor as it appears. But still, I would say to go 5 of 6 for 67 yards is pretty good. He still showed some explosive plays. And one of his sacks, he very closely was able to get out of it. So, we'll see as it develops, but he's definitely a loser for now. And I'll say on the fumbles, it was the backup center, the starting center for now, but they drafted Zach Frazier for a reason in the 2nd round. The center for both of these dropped fumbles was Nate Herbig, who's been in the NFL for 6 years now, has never really been able to make a true name for himself on the offensive line. Definitely more of a journeyman guy, not the greatest. So it would make sense if Justin Fields was with a different center, which he was, Nate Herbig, instead of Zach Frazier like he normally is. So that's going to lead to handling snaps poorly. So I'm not going to get too worried about those, but I am still going to be worried about the sacks. We do want to see him get away from that for sure. So to see it still get piled up, see him no rushing touchdowns or passing touchdowns, those are the concerns here. You'd like to see a little bit more explosiveness. But again, we still have a couple more weeks. He's still working on some things. And again, it wasn't the right center that he had those fumbled snaps from. So we can, I think you can put those to rest a little bit. But the sacks, the slow processing, that's still the big concern. And then also, of course, Mike Tomlin still coming out and saying Russell Wilson is still in pole position. That's still the big concern. But I will argue that, again, it might be better for Justin Fields not to start the season, because I still firmly believe that Russell Wilson will get benched if he ever starts, and Justin Fields will be able to come in towards the end of the season and at least light the world on fire for our fantasy teams. We'll see what happens for NFL, if he's improved at all. But he'll still score his fantasy points, and that's really what I'm hoping for. I think like there's a possibility if he starts early in the season where he could be benched for Russell Wilson. I kind of want it to go the opposite way, where I want Russell Wilson to get the start, and then I want him to remind everyone why the Broncos were willing to eat so much dead cap to get rid of him, and then they'll give Justin Fields a shot and see how he looks. There's very much still a possibility that neither of them are the answer here, but for our fantasy teams, we still need to be getting Justin Fields. So that's where I'm at there. A concern, but not too concerning, I'd say, at least as it returns to the fumbles. The sacks are the big concern, and that's kind of always been the case here with Justin Fields. This might be true. This might be true. They might want Rudolph back. Wilson won 7 games in a row, Jason says in the chat. This is true. The Broncos went on a little bit of a winning streak there. A lot of it was the defense getting a lot better. Russell Wilson was okay too, but he's still not an NFL quarterback anymore. He's really, really not. And I'm finally ready to see it in week 1. And maybe we'll get Russell Wilson action in the preseason and we'll see him look fine as well. But either way, Justin Fields, some concerns here. Big loser from this weekend's preseason action. We wanted to see more is, I think, the big thing here. Like, we needed and wanted to see a lot more, and we just didn't. But still 5 of 6 for 67. That's a pretty good completion percentage. The 2 fumbles, that was because it's the backup center. But 2 sacks, that's the big concern. Still not processing very well. And, didn't even really demonstrate much on his legs. But maybe that's just a preseason thing. And then lastly, honorable mention for a loser, Ryan Flournoy. Ryan Flournoy, ladies and gentlemen, finishes the day with 3 targets, brings in 2 of them for 8 yards, dropped a pass in the red zone, and also fumbled out of bounds at one point. Really just did not look that good. Part of it, of course, catching passes from Trey Lance, who also did not look very good. And then also part of it being the fact that he had been injured the last few weeks, so he's kind of getting more up to game speed. The only reason he's not a true loser and more of an honorable mention is just because he is a rookie, 6th-round rookie, from a small school. This was always going to take a little bit of time anyway, and he had missed the last couple weeks due to injury. So we can react a little bit more reasonably these next couple weeks of preseason. If he's all we hope is that he just makes the roster. That's all we want from him. I don't want to hear practice squad. I want to hear the main roster. So he needs to play a little bit better for sure, but he really did not look good. The drop was not great. The fumbling out of bounds, not great. And then only to have 8 yards off of 2 receptions, not great either. So lots to work on still for him, but we're still crossing our fingers and hoping for the Ryan Flournoy breakout, at least towards the end of the year. Yes. That should do it. That should do it. Do we have any questions in the chat? Let me go ahead and check this. Yes, I agree. Benson's biggest issue is his vision. It's awful. It's awful. Should we pick up Jarrett Patterson? Been hearing rumbles that Kamani Vidal may not make the team. I'm going to say this. There were rumblings that Javonte Williams was not going to make the Broncos roster. I think we just need to press pause a little bit. It is important to note that Kamani Vidal did pick up a minor injury and has been kind of in the training room a lot of this preseason, a lot of this offseason. And so he hasn't had much opportunity to make a name for himself. But I don't think they'd get rid of him. They drafted him for a reason. He's still a rookie. Worst case scenario, he makes the practice squad. But this was always going to take time anyway. Again, small school, late draft pick. Yes, great athleticism, really good producer in college, has the mold of a bell cow running back, but it still takes time. Like you still have to earn the trust of the coaching staff. You still have to show up at practice. You still have to do all these things. And he wasn't able to do all those things yet. He'll be able to soon. I think some silver lining being that he didn't play in the preseason game. He was held out of this game. They do care about his health. They don't want to rush him out there. So I would still hold on to Kamani Vidal. I would be buying Kamani Vidal everywhere. I'm hearing a lot of people getting worried about him. Don't. Just let the process play out. Nothing's changed. Like, that's my thing, is we have this short-term or long-term memory loss of fantasy football. We all just operate in this very short term and don't let things develop. Let things develop. Let things develop. This is a 6th-round rookie from Troy. Like, what do we want? Like, what do we want? We want him to be the RB1 already? No, right? They brought in Greg Roman for a reason and then reunited him with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins for a reason. Do we think that's sustainable? No. And that's why we want Kamani Vidal for the second half of the season. Once he gets healthy, once he gets acclimated to the game speed, once the injuries start to pile up, right? That's when the Kamani Vidal shares get exciting. The end of the year, 2025, 2026, right? So don't worry about it right now. He's going to get on the roster. Not a big deal. Even if he makes the practice squad, it'd still be fine. But I don't think he will. I think things are fine in the Kamani Vidal camp. So, yeah. Is Simone Vaki going to be the RB3 or Craig Reynolds? For now, it's probably going to be Craig Reynolds. But Vaki could definitely make some noise. Could put a fork in Trey Lance? I'm just going to say no, I guess. I mean, obviously, always a project and, the QB3 anyway. So if you're rostering him, I don't think there's too much to move on from him yet. You're kind of already kind of desperate anyway. So just still be desperate. The upside's still there. Is it going to pan out? Probably not. But, you could still roster him if you'd like. And then, so that should be fine. That should do it, guys. I believe that is everything. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Oh, wait, actually, you need to decide between Rashee and Jameson as the 12th round keeper. It should be Rashee. Yeah, even as a Jameson Williams truther, you should get Rashee Rice in the 12th round. That is really, really great value. You'll be able to draft Jameson Williams in your draft, but Rashee Rice would go earlier. Probably going to have more production as well, at least a higher floor. So yes, that's the answer there. All right, now we'll continue back with the outro. Thank you all again for tuning in. This is another fun episode of Wake and Take. You guys were a great audience as always. I hope to see you all tomorrow. We'll be breaking down the news and other fun stuff at 10 a.m. Eastern here on the Player Profiler YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You all have a terrific Tuesday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com. Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.